Do you have loads of sweet potatoes in your future? Let me show you how to preserve them for long-term storage without having to use a pressure canner. Hi folks, I'm Darcy from the Purposeful Pantry, where we talk about dehydrating things all the time and other ways to preserve your food for long-term storage in your pantry. Today we're doing sweet potatoes, how to dehydrate for slices that you can do scallop potatoes if you want, or how to do powder to have mashed sweet potatoes whenever you want them or to use in your baking products. So let's get started. Okay, you can see I'm working on a pile of sweet potatoes. I'm just taking off the skins, and this will end up going back out into our garden because I'm not going to do anything with the skins. But okay, so I already started on my slicing. First thing first, if you're going to use a mandolin, you must use a glove, okay? Even if you use the guard, the thing is that your hands can get wet and kind of slimy, and as you're cutting, it's so easy to lose the grip of that guide and still come across this blade. I am clumsy, and this would have taken my fingers off if I didn't have protection on my hands. So you need to wear protection. The other thing I really suggest is not to make slices with these big chunks of sweet potatoes. If you're going to do that, cut it, and then you have a smaller piece to work with. This is going to be saved for doing mashed, because that's how I roll. I like mashed sweet potatoes too. So what I'm going for are the longer tubers that look like this, that give smaller slices, because I think that's going to work best for what I'm going to do with it in the end. Like when you're making scallop sweet potatoes or things like that. So here we go with this. I'm just going to take my sweet potatoes and I'm going to go run it across the blade, and it's going to cut right down on the bottom. So here's where you find them. I found that I prefer a thinner sweet potato. So I do it at about 3/16 because this OXO has the ability to change. I don't know if you can see. Can you see this? Yeah, it has the ability to change really fine instead of just going in quarter amounts. So I do it right there between 3/16 and a quarter, and it makes it cook better, and you get a better cook. I'm gonna say this too. You can decide to bake your sweet potatoes and then put them in the refrigerator overnight, and then slice your sweet potatoes with your knife. That works just as well. You get to skip the blanching stage, but if I'm doing this many, that takes up way too much time for me to bake it or to put it in the microwave that way. I'm just going to do this. Okay, as we're getting it near a boil, I'm going to show you what I'm doing. I'm taking a spider, which is a strainer that will help me do this a little better. It's going to make things go a little faster for me. And I'm going to load it up first, because I'm not going to just drop these things into the water, because the bounce back can burn. So this is just what I do to make it a little easier. I'm also not looking to fill up my entire pot, because in blanching, you want everything to blanch pretty evenly, and if it's too full, it doesn't get to move around everything. So we're going to go ahead and just insert these into the pot. Now, technically, an official blanch is when you've put your food in and the food returns back to a boil. That's when you turn on your timer. I'm going to tell you, I don't always do that, because some things it'll go too long and it needs to be cut back some. So I'm going to give these about 4 minutes to blanch. Here is our 4-minute mark. I'm going to pull these out. That's what they look like. And they're going right into a water bath. All right, so what we have here are sweet potatoes that have sat in the ice bath. They're a little bit pliable. When you get them super thin, they might actually break, which is why I changed what I was doing. And even some of these, you're seeing that they might break because of the way that, like that. So you don't want to overcook them, but also know that some are going to break and it's okay. So we're going to go ahead and start putting these on our trays. So there is our last tray. Yes, I am missing a tray. I don't know where I put it, but it is missing. But thankfully, we had just enough to do all 5 trays. We are going to hit the vegetable. We are going to hit the vegetable setting at 125F 52C. We're right about there. The time doesn't matter, because we don't go by time. I don't set my machine for time. I make sure it's just set out far enough that it won't turn off, and we'll check them when they're dry. And now what I'm doing is just taking the last of my big ones, cutting them down. I do them in smaller pieces because it makes it cook a little faster. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this same water, because now we're cooking all of our pieces. And this also may take quite a few of these rounds of cooking these down to get all of our mashed sweet potatoes done. And you do it as you can. All right, so this is going to take us quite a few episodes to get all this mashed down. All right, so now what we have is all of our potatoes that I've let them boil in water for a while till they were soft. Took them out, did the next batch. These have oxidized just a little bit because I left them out instead of sitting in water. That was my fault, but oxidation it doesn't change the taste of the food, it just changes the color a little bit. So these are going to be a little less than optimal color, but we're still going to eat them. They're still going to be fine. It's what makes like regular white potatoes turn really dark gray if you don't blanch them before or you let them sit out of water. So this is just an issue of oxidation, so they have a little tint to them, but no worries. All right, I'm going to keep mashing these until they are fully blended. I am not adding any fats to them. I am not adding any kind of stock. I'm not trying to make sweet potato mashed like you would do with cream or whatever else you might use. You want to leave them just plain because you will add that into it when you cook them up later. And here are our sweet potato chips. They look just like this. They have dried well. They dried for I gave them about probably 18 hours because I wanted to make sure they were good and dry, and because I like to dry things longer just to make sure that happens. I'm going to keep this. Here's another one. Now here's the thing to remember, that when you're going to test these, you don't want to pull them right out of your dehydrator and then just assume that they're ready. You need to allow them to cool off for a few moments because those sugars make this very pliable. So if I do this right now, you can see it's just bendy, okay? It doesn't just break easily. And sweet potatoes aren't going to just crisp. They're not going to be like a chip because we didn't fry these or we didn't bake them, we dried them. But they need to to cool off before you test. Now I know these are good and dry. They have been in there for so long that they are dry. But right now, if I test them, they're kind of bendy still. You want to give them that time so that you can see I can tell already in just a couple minutes that we've been here. They're ready, okay? So let's get these stored up. Okay, the thing to remember about dehydrated food is when you rehydrate it, you are going to add some kind of moisture back into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these into a bowl and we're going to just let them rehydrate. Now, what will work better to do this is to use hot water to rehydrate. It opens up the cells, it rehydrates faster. But the biggest thing about all of this is when you rehydrate these, they're not cooked. They are back to the same blanched state they were when you started. You still need to cook them in whatever process that you're doing. Now, if you're going to make scallop potatoes with this, you don't have to rehydrate. You just have to make sure there's enough liquid in your recipe that allows you to make scallop sweet potatoes. But if you're going to put these in something else that you want them back to what they were, then this is how you do it. You can do it this way. Now, sometimes you can just leave these in the refrigerator to soak. You can do hot water bath and get them on there pretty quickly. Or like me, I'm just going to let these sit here for a little while so that you can see what they look like when they're done. Okay, as always for storage, an airtight jar is what you need or an airtight container is all that you need for storage for any of your dehydrated foods. You can use commercial jars that you get other things in that you wash it out that you use. You can use canning jars. You can use Mylar bags that have been sealed. You can use anything like that you want. I prefer jars because they're more convenient for me. And this is all you should need as long as you've got a container that's the right size. If I only had half a jar full of these, I would change jars, okay? Don't store that way if you're not going to vacuum seal. Vacuum sealing is not necessary, but it can be helpful. I'm just going to put mine on there, get it started. And now we get on to our mash. So this is the mashed sweet potatoes. They've been in the refrigerator overnight only because I had to let my slices finish. So I am taking a chunk of these mashed that I did. I just simply put them in water, let them, the chunks into water, let them cook. Then I took a potato masher and just mash. And so what I'm going to do now is just spread this out. I'm not trying to make fruit leather. Okay, I am trying to make dried sweet potato because we're going to powder this up into flakes when we're done so that you can make mashed sweet potatoes anytime. A fruit leather that's rollable, you want this spread out super thin because you want it to dry really well and be hard and brittle. So I'm going to spread this out really far. All right, here we go. All of our trays of sweet potato mash into the dehydrator. We got a new dehydrator yesterday to try out. So this is the new Excalibur, one of the new Excaliburs that is like this model right here. And it has an open top where you can see things happening on the end. So we're going to get this started. Turn it on. Our temperature is going to go down to We're going to go down to 125. When it restarts at the stock temperature of 165 all the time. The cool thing is you can change the temperature to Celsius for those of you who need Celsius. And my time is going to be set at, I'm going to go ahead and just set this up because I never go by the time. I go by whether it's done or not. And we're going to get started. All right, overnight, I'll just let it dry because I really do want this dry, crackly stuff. And I flipped it over once. Oh, I'm going to lose everything because I don't have a second hand. I flipped it over once during the night to make sure that the bottom was dry as well. And this is what we're looking for. Dry, crackly, breaks apart easily. That's going to make it the easiest to do later. Okay, before we get to breaking down the powder, I wanted to show you, I let my slices soak in the refrigerator overnight just so that you can see. Once soaked, they get really soft and pliable. The thing is they're not cooked. So you still need time to cook these when you're using them in a meal. They're not just automatically rehydrate and eat like they are. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is show you how to do this into a powder. I've taken some of my sheet and I'm going to break it up. Now, if you have the same thing that I did where it oxidized, you can go ahead and remove those pieces if you want. It's not a big deal, but it's also not going to affect the flavor of your powder. I'm going to start sticking these in my blender to start working on a powder, but I do want to break down as much as I can before I put it in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started here because I don't want to grind it so much by putting so much in it that it starts to cook the powder because that's not what you want at all. So here we go. Now, if you want to, you can sift this powder out before you store it because if you're wanting to use this for bread or noodles or something, you'd want to go ahead and sift out any of the larger pieces. Oh, well, there we go. That was the heat. Okay, the first time I pulled this out, I had some problems where it did get a little ground down in the bottom. So what you can do is you can sift out, like I'm doing here. So this texture is a little bit grainy, because we've got some smaller chunks that got shoved down the bottom. So what we're gonna do is just sift all this out. But if you're doing this for bread flour, you don't want these chunks. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it a second time. All right, here's our last batch. See, a little bit of that heating made it stick to the top. All right, so this last grind, So this last grind got us a finer grind. Now, again, I am not going for bread flour smooth because that's not how I use this, but you can do it a little bit more if you are. And it will rehydrate. Okay, so I'm taking about a quarter cup, a little less than a quarter cup of my powder. I'm gonna put it in a bowl, okay? And I'm gonna take hot water and I'm gonna put it in the bowl. That might have been a little bit much. And I am going to mix it up. Now, if you prefer, you can do this with hot broth and do it, and then you've already got some seasoning in here. But at that point, you can use hot broth. If you had something else, I don't know. So at that point, I need a little bit more. It's kind of sticky. And you can certainly use hot broth in this if you wanted to, whatever kind you like to use the most. If that's what you do to add a little bit of liquid to your mash. I tend to only add a little bit of butter in the end. Okay, there we go. So if I wanted to add butter, I would do it at this point, and just let it melt. And I'm going to walk away from this for a minute because what I want this to do is rehydrate just like it is. I think I have enough liquid in there, but I'm going to let that powder rehydrate right now, and then I'm going to come back and check on it in just a few moments. Okay, I have blended in my butter, and at this point you can add whatever seasonings you want. You could have added those before as it rehydrated. That's fine too. Now, here it is. It's a little gummy. It's a little sticky. So I'm going to add just a little bit more water. Not a lot. And then here is my side dish for dinner. Enjoy. And if you would love to learn how to do pumpkins in the same fashion, watch this video right here. And until I see you again next time, keep preserving and have fun.